That's right, ladies and gentlemen, from Tallahassee to Thomasville and from coast to Atlantic coast, it's time to wake up War Chant here on a 97.9 ESPN Radio. It's a very happy Friday, July the 14th to you and yours. Coming to you, of course, from Charlotte, North Carolina, the ACC Kickoff. Recording this on Thursday, just wrapping up with the Atlantic Day here at ACC Kickoff at the Westin downtown. This is a really cool event. I think they made a really good call when they moved this here just a couple years ago. But thanks so much for waking up with us here at 6 a.m. on 97.9 ESPN Radio or whatever streaming device you listen to, however you listen to the podcast, which you know comes out right after the show gets over. And then, of course, how you can reach out to us, radio@warchant.com, @wakeupwarchant is your Twitter handle. And on top of all that, well, you know, as always, we're brought to you by For the Table, our friends at Madison Social Central and Township. We got a packed hour for you today. We've pretty much wrapped up with interviews by now. You're going to hear from a lot of folks today and throughout the next week on Wake Up War Chant. Today, though, we're actually slated to, in just a second from now, I've got an interview with Jeff Cameron that we're going to start playing. We've got Jimbo Fisher later on for you today, and we have Derwin James. We're bringing out the big guns for you today here on Wake Up War Chant. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get us in with Mr. Jeff Cameron. And then when we come back, we'll have Jimbo Fisher, and then after that it's going to be Derwin James. And as promised, the man himself sitting right down. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. He's not sitting right down. We pre-recorded this. Jeff Cameron.
Yes.
Joins Wake Up War Chant. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, buddy. I'm doing well. It's been a full fun day.
This has been a heck of a day. We got folks from the Peach Bowl. We got Lamar Jackson. We got Jimbo, DeAndre, Derwin. Who all?
Yeah,
give a plug. Who's coming up on the JCS?
Dabo Sweeney. So people may be very surprised that he came on my show.
Yeah. After the Clemson snub last year, I think we both kind of raised eyebrows when we had some Clemson folks on the show. We were scheduled to do Tyrone Crowder, but didn't expect Jimbo to go 50 minutes over in the press room.
In the press room, yeah. No, I had DeAndre, Derwin, I had Jimbo, obviously, but I had my favorite, Steve Adazio, who I love to talk to. Obviously, Coach Adazio is a kind of a media darling at this thing, I think. You won't meet anybody who does this for a living that talks to Coach Adazio and doesn't have at least a little admiration for him. I mean, it's hard to win at Clemson, and at Boston College, and he's won 3 of the last 4 years in the sense that they went bowling. So, yeah. And he's kind of fun and honest about it because you can ask him tough questions and he'll handle it.
There's something about a coach that's self-aware, just because there are so many coaches who aren't. And, how dare you talk about my program? It's just like, dude, you're at Coastal Carolina. Pump the brakes.
Yeah, it's hard, too, because it's tough to ask questions to people when you set them up by insulting them. And the thing of it is, you kind of have to let them to say, well, listen, at a school like Boston College, which in a way is already a slight, and it's a great academic institution, so he knows I'm only talking football. What is reasonable to expect at a place like BC? Well, going bowling's about the best I think you could hope for, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we talked big picture ACC stuff and how much harder his job is now that this conference is the beast that it was a year ago. And it figures defensively to be great again this year. I think it takes a small step back offensively just because, you lose your quarterback at North Carolina, and obviously you lose your quarterback to Deshaun Watson at Clemson, and you go through some teams that lose quarterbacks. But it's still, high-level football, obviously tough to compete at BC. But, we did that, and we had Dabo, and so all that will be coming up.
And, you kind of mentioned it. Last year, the first year this thing was in Charlotte, all eyes were certainly on Clemson. I mean, Florida State was kind of the dark horse, but they're coming off appearing in a national championship. They return a lot of guys, including arguably the best player to ever come through that program. All eyes were just certainly kind of on one school, and then there was some attention on Florida State. But I feel like this year, more than anything, what's cool, I mean, you've been going to these for a while. This is my third rodeo at the ACC Kickoff. The eyes are on the conference more than anything.
First time that's ever happened, Ryan. It's never happened this way, ever. It's always been a star player, whether that's Jameis or Deshaun, or a team that had a chance to compete to win a championship. And and that's been largely Florida State and Clemson. But it has never been really, hey, look at what we are and talk about us honestly, about where we sit. And, coach after coach, look, they got talking points. But all those guys are rightfully noting that you have a Heisman Trophy winner, a runner-up, but you have a national championship. You have, when you look at this conference, especially the Atlantic Division, I mean, look, it's hard to argue there was a better conference in college football a year ago. I don't think you really can. And now the question is the conference growing to a place where they can sustain that? The uptick in recruiting and coaching acumen in this conference is pretty obvious. So I don't know that they could sustain that level, that kind of dominance that they had a year ago, but they can certainly be one of the top 2 conferences in the country. And they want, this, Ryan, you've been here all afternoon and yesterday, and now, obviously we see what they're doing. The conference is promoting itself. They're very, very proud. They're kind of puffing out their chest a little bit. And I think they have every right to. The SEC certainly would do it. Yeah,
to the right of me, to the left of you, and if you're on Twitter or social media, you've probably seen it by now. There's this great – it's almost like the ACC military parade, them like taking the tanks through downtown.
Yeah,
They've got the Heisman Trophy. They've got the Bowl Championship Trophy. They've got Florida State's Orange Bowl Trophy. They've got the National Championship Trophy and the ACC Championship Trophy on the same place. That's a lot of firepower.
Well, and when you look at the amount of talent in this conference, I mean, they're right to point out the All-Americans, the Heisman Trophy winner Lamar Jackson returning. They're right to point out Derwin James, many people think is the best player in college football. So when you look at the conference, the awards from a year ago, but the returning star power is there as well, and they want you to know that, and they want you to talk a lot about where this conference is headed. They finally have fully embraced that football drives the bus.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being good at basketball because the ACC still is, and they still dominate basketball. But the fact that there's so much revenue and there's so much money and there's so much to be at stake in football that when you have this collection of coaches, when you have this collection of talent, and as Jimbo Fisher and many others were quick to point out that today, when you have the quarterbacks that have driven the ACC over these last couple years, it makes for really good football.
It does, and now I'm interested to see with the defensive line at NC State, the defensive line at Miami, defensive talent in general at Miami, the talent that Florida State has returning on defense. It figures to be one of the best defenses in the country. You go through and look, this year the conversation, the narrative will be shifted over to the defensive side. Not that they won't be talking about DeAndre Francois and Lamar Jackson and a few other really talented quarterbacks in this league, including at Duke. They're going to be talking about the defenses because there are 4 or 5 defenses in this conference that are as good as any in the country.
Yeah. Switching gears to Florida State, you mentioned Derwin James. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Sports Illustrated, number 1 player in the country. He played 7 quarters last year. He hasn't even started enough games to have technically considered to be started a whole season. I get the hype. I understand the talent, but is he the best player in college football?
Well, in terms of production, you can't say that he is because he has 1 career interception and he hasn't played a lot of football. I understand that's the counter. If you're just basing it on the limited number of games you have seen him play, then you know he is freakish athletic. He can do just about anything. We all crack up watching the video of him punk a Florida lineman, and we've seen him do a lot of different things, but he can impact the game in so many different ways. I think they realized that had he stayed healthy, I mean, obviously he had the interception, had a great game against Ole Miss, and then he immediately in week 2 has the injury. I think they realize, what we're doing at Florida State, what's going on there as a fan base, and I'm sure everybody has thought this, when you have a talent like that and you know he's going to play a limited number of games as is because he's going to declare early, you just hope it doesn't become a Cromartie situation, where he was such an elite talent, and you got a glimpse. You saw it against Miami that one year, the interception, the things he could do athletically that other people on a field filled with freaks. He stands out above the rest, and yet because of that injury, we haven't seen him be productive in terms of a couple of years of football. And so I really hope for that young man's sake and for the fans of Florida State that everybody gets to see him play a full season before he leaves here. Because, the truth is, if he knock on wood, if he somehow got hurt this year, he'd still declare and go in the top 10 next year, at the end of the season. So you really need him to stay healthy because he's also a guy that I think can dominate. And they're counting on him to do that.
And he's the key cog. He's the leader of that defense. And really, this is a defense, when you look at it, sure, they were injured last year. And Brian Clark brought up a great point on yesterday's show that because of the injuries last year, the guys who are second and third string this year, they played. They got their experience.
Sure.
The excuses are kind of out, and you need your vocal leader. You need that main feature piece of that defense to be ready to go for a unit that you cannot have underperformed 2 years in a row.
No, and Derwin is a guy who will get people lined up right. He plays with a fierce tenacity, a nastiness to his game that is almost awe-inspiring. You know, this is a guy that has evil intentions on the football field. We got a glimpse of it again in the spring game. You kind of, I forgot what you can do, young man. That's a difference maker there. You're right. But, you know, that's the defense early in the season is going to have to carry the day. Because when you play Alabama, when you play the kinds of defenses we just referenced with NC State and Miami, you know, they don't figure to necessarily be high-scoring games. You need that defense to step up and carry it until your offensive line can kind of get solidified and get some experience there. And then I think Florida State could end up with a magical season. You know, frankly, Ryan, if they win the first game against Alabama, and, of course, that's a giant if, and I don't know how many people will predict them to do that, but if they win that game, people will begin to talk about an undefeated season. And I don't know if that's realistic. It's anymore in college football, and as good as this conference is, if you have a letdown, you get beat.
But you understand why people would do that.
Without question. And you don't have – of course, the good thing is you don't have to win that game. If you don't and you play reasonably well and it's not an embarrassment like what Alabama did to Southern Cal a year ago, then, you know, you got a chance to fight your way back through there, and obviously you can still win your conference and go play in the college football playoff and maybe get a rematch. And,
you know, as much as we like to argue the pros and cons of the college football playoff, and we've been talking about this a little bit, I do think that's one of the unexpected pros of the college football playoff is that teams are more inclined to play a game like Florida State, Alabama. Teams are more inclined to go out there just because the human element is almost just impressed that you did play the game, that you did make it happen, rather than did you win or did you lose. Now, obviously, you can't get blown out or anything like that, but
you'd prefer not to, sure. Yeah, it also depends on how you get blown out. If you get blown out, and, you know, it's kind of weird to be talking in those terms because I think Florida State's defense is too good to get blown out. But,
I agree.
But I will say this. You know, that game last year between Alabama and Southern Cal wasn't competitive.
No.
If you're competitive and you get worn down because maybe your offense struggles to move the football and your defense is out there for too many plays. You know, Alabama, through 80 plays against Clemson, had given up 14 points. And then there's an extra, 14 plays, which is an absurd number of plays that Clemson ran against Alabama. But that great defense got worn down and gave up score to end the game. Well, yeah, I don't care who you are. If you give a team too many at-bats, eventually they get worn down. And so if Florida State's offense struggles to move the football against Bama's defense because you have a young man starting his first game at left tackle, because you've got some guys that you're uncertain about up front, if that happens, then you can see where you could get worn down and the game could get away from you late. But short of that, I see that game being a very close defensive struggle.
Offensively, you've alluded to it a lot. There's a lot of youth and there's a lot of talent, but there's a lot of inexperience. What do you think it takes for that team to gel quickly on that side of the ball?
Well, I don't know. I think you're going to come out and throw the football against Alabama. I don't think you can line up and run the football when you got young guys starting for the first time ever at left tackle, and Mr. Ball's got his hands filled right off the bat if he's indeed the starter. And, we'll see if Minshew's there at the left guard spot. Who's the center? Is it Alec Eberle, or do you go with a Bavion Johnson? If it's Bavion Johnson, it's his first start as well against an Alabama defense. That's a hell of a thing to have to do to get your feet wet.
You look at center alone, it's either Andrew Baselli, who's
never played a game.
Yeah. Bavion Johnson, or Alec Eberle, who's experienced but is okay and coming off a hip surgery.
And I need him, if he's going to be the starter, and maybe he is, to get stronger, to be more consistent. And by all accounts, he's had a good offseason. We'll see how healthy he is. That's really the name of the game against Alabama is the line of scrimmage, because I think Florida State has the skill players certainly to compete with Alabama across the board, as much as anybody can, given their 7 straight number 1 recruiting classes at Alabama.
Alabama, easy week, and then you're headed to play Miami at home. I think that game could not have come at a better time for you.
Well, because Miami's going to come to Doak Campbell Stadium with an unproven quarterback playing his first ever game against that defense in this rivalry, first ever game in this rivalry. So I do think it's probably a nightmare scenario for Mark Richt. I do think Miami's defense is going to be very good.
That linebacker core is going to be disgusting.
Really, really good. So I don't, I agree with you. I think you want to play Miami early here before they kind of figure out what they're doing at quarterback. That's a hell of a game for that kid to have to play so early in the season.
And that'll be if it goes chalk, that'll be what, number 8?
Yeah, imagine I can tell you it will be number 8. And if you get the opportunity of a rematch because they win the Coastal finally, then Florida State could get 9 in one season with 2 wins in the same year. And if that were to happen, we'd be traveling on the road for number 10 next year in the Platinum Bohica.
And I think it would be interesting that would come at the one that if you feel like Miami's got a shot, that's kind of the one, isn't it? If not now, win Miami, because that team's going to be rebuilding in Florida State. That defense is going to be needing some new pieces. Offensively, I think they're going to be pretty good.
Well, DeAndre will be a junior at that point, a redshirt junior, and, you would feel pretty good about his chances of handling the pressure of a game like that. But you're right, they'd be rebuilding that entire defense. I would hate for number 10 to have to come down there, but I love the idea of winning 2 in the same season against Miami. So I don't know which – I'm trying to balance it out. I'm trying to get to that Bohica, man.
So I think we're all in agreement. The Alabama game, if you win, that's great. If you lose, you kind of have to walk on eggshells the rest of the season. But –
you can't afford a slip-up, but yeah.
But this season comes down to that trip to Clemson. It has to. It's how this thing has played out since 2011. Everything comes down to that.
Yeah, and the Louisville rematch, because you are talking about bringing in the Heisman Trophy winner from a year ago that absolutely carved your defense and embarrassed you in a way that we had never seen a Jimbo Fisher team embarrassed. And so people will look at that as, is that a system issue? Did they not know how to stop that offense, or is that something that, hey, listen, it got away from you in a hurry, and you just flush that one and you move on, and we'll see you next year in Tallahassee. I think Florida State's going to be a lot better, certainly, in that game, but I don't want to overlook Louisville, too.
Oh, and I agree with you, but I think just the point that you could bring up another team, just that you could say, yeah, but don't look at them, says everything that we were saying at the top about the ACC.
I don't think there's any question, because when I had Jimbo on earlier today and interviewed him, and I know you did as well, I will say that it was kind of fascinating. I talked to him. I've been interviewing Coach Fisher since he was just the offensive coordinator, and then later the head coach in waiting. And I've had him on every year, and I've had him when he became head coach, obviously, every year at these ACC meetings. And I remember talking to him about the ACC, both on and off the record, about what kind of conference it was and where they thought it could go. And, you go back just 4 or 5 years, Ryan, it had a hard time with its reputation amongst the other Power Five as a team as a conference.
And staving off rumors that it was even going to survive.
Right. And so when you think of where they were a few years ago, and I'm thinking back on those conversations that I had with Jimbo at that time and to the conversation I had with him today, in which he's able to rattle off the platitudes of this conference and the consistency with which players get drafted at these schools in the first and second round, when you look at the wins and you look at the significance of having the national championship and the Heisman Trophy winner in the same conference, and you look at the record out of conference, the successes they've had against the SEC alike, yes, I do think that's really the story of this ACC kickoff, is that you are now propping up the conference as opposed to a player or a team.
All right, Jeff, before I let you run, I gotta know. Ballot, who's winning the Atlantic, who's winning the Coastal, who's taking the ACC?
Well, I have Florida State winning the Atlantic, and I have Miami winning the
Coastal. You do have
Miami. I do have Miami winning the Coastal. I love that defense an awful lot. I've wrestled with it, but I think part of it, Ryan, is that I couldn't think of a viable team from the Coastal to take it. I'm not saying I believe in Miami as much as I'm saying there's nobody else in the Coastal.
But you think that defense is going to be really good, and you think that they can overcome replacing a quarterback better than Pitt can, and better than Carolina can, and better than Virginia Tech can.
Well, that's exactly what I think, and I also think that they can win the Coastal with 3 losses. So they don't have to be great to win the Coastal. Is what I'm saying. They can be good.
You can be 8-4 and win that division more than likely.
Yeah, and so I picked them because I really couldn't come up with somebody else that I liked an awful lot. So I almost by default, and it'll be interesting. I mean, I'm actually really intrigued by ACC football across the board this year because I think some of those middle-tier teams, there might be a couple that are a little better than we think. NC State's a very good football team. Could be interesting.
Who finished really hot.
Really hot, and with a very good defense. Listen, if you think about NC State for a second, Ryan, they missed a chip shot field goal against Clemson that would have ruined Clemson's season.
They drop a pick
in the end zone against Florida State. They would have beaten. They're a play away against Florida State and Clemson. That's crazy to think about. That's NC State. That's how good the conference was a year ago.
Yeah. I think, and I mean, you think about what Dave Dorn did, just beating Carolina alone in Chapel Hill, in that opportunity, when really, let's face it, to a certain extent, his job may have been on the line.
And rightfully so.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Because they just couldn't take care of it. Because, you look back at the what-ifs, and you look back
and they've had a lot of them.
They
really have. Yeah, and he hasn't always handled those shortcomings real well. When he gets asked about the woulda, coulda, shouldas, he's not always real friendly in responding to those. Nobody likes to be reminded about those.
No.
But the truth is, at some point, you have to win those games.
Well, it's like you said at the top. Nobody likes to be asked, well, you did great, but or you did, or that was really good for you.
Well, the caveats are tough, and you can hear them coming when they're prefaced, before each question. That probably gets old, no doubt, but you got to cash that in. And one of the things that this place loves about Adazio at BC is that he knows that question's coming, and he doesn't dodge it, and he doesn't get angry. He says, well, obviously we have our challenges at Boston College, but we've got to take those on head on and learn from our mistakes in the past and move forward. That's a different way of handling it than Doran did.
There's a certain amount of self-awareness that is so appreciated at events like this.
Well, yeah, because it can get – I can only imagine if you're doing the routes for people who are at home listening to this or in your car listening to this, and it's just a sea of humanity up here, and it's just Radio Row, that is, and it's just station after station after station.
Being asked the same 10 questions.
Well, yeah, something similar, right? And you don't know the people. You're not on with them on a regular basis. It's kind of funny when they come to sit down with us, and we're Tallahassee-based, and it's Florida State guys. They're so relieved. You can see it. They're like, oh, okay, I know who you are. You're good. You're not going to do anything crazy. You're going to ask me a normal question because you really don't know what you're going to get asked when you're on in some of these other markets. And so, anyhow, the guys can get worn down pretty quick, and you can see it on their face. Like they reach that point when you've asked a certain number of questions where they're like, okay, listen, man, I got 10 more of these. Really, brother? Do we need to do this is not going to be a novel. Let's move on. Well, Adazio's the exception, baby. You can't kick him off the air. He wants to keep talking.
Jeff, thanks so much as always, my friend.
Thanks, brother. Always appreciate it.
Looking forward to hearing those things on the Jeff Cameron Show. Next week is when we're back.
Yeah. I'll be back on 3 to 6 every day next week. So, yeah.
Good stuff.
Thanks, brother.
Thanks as always, Mr. Cameron. We're back right after this. Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio. Welcome back to Wake Up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, brought to you by our good friends from For the Table, Madison Social, Central, and Township. And we welcome in now someone who's no stranger to Wake Up War Chant, of course, the head coach of your Florida State Seminoles, Mr. Jimbo Fisher. Coach, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
It's good to be with you. It's good. I know usually when you're on, we're talking with Gene, but it's good to have you one-on-one. So
glad to be here.
Good to be here. And, of course, it still kind of blows my mind that we're entering year number 8.
Yeah.
As head coach at Florida State. Does it seem like it's been 8 years?
It does when you think about it, but it does. It's as they say, time flies, and you've had a lot of success, so things go faster, and it's really, people giving you a lot of attention, so it makes it go because you're always busy. But at the same time, you look back and say, man, it is flown by.
And you look back just at those 8 years, how much college football's changed, how much things have changed. What do you feel like since you took the podium at 2010, you're announced as the next head coach of Florida State, what do you feel like has changed the most just in that time and just even the time since you've been at Florida State?
Social media. Social media has changed everything from recruiting to players to kids, and people say, well, this guy does this. Well, they always did. You just know more about it now. I mean, I think social media has changed the whole dynamic of everything we do.
And even with that, I mean, you look at the current group of kids that Ryan Clark likes to joke about it. Some of the guys that are on the team now, Google is older than some of the guys on the team.
It is. It's amazing how that this world is ever changing, and it's going in this landscape of sports because everyone wants a piece of it. Everyone wants to know what's going on, and college football is the thing that everybody follows. And
is it sometimes interesting to piece that together now that you've got kids who don't know what life without Facebook was or life without Twitter or life like that?
You're right. It's funny. Like I was joking with even some other players. I said, what'd y'all do if them phones blew up? We'd have to talk. Everybody wouldn't be looking at their phone or texting or communicating, you know what I mean? So we're going to start sending plays in by email and text or Snapchat or Instagram or whatever the heck they got.
Yeah, playbook attached to this email, boys. So as much as things have changed in college football and things have just changed in culture, things have changed in the ACC, man. I mean,
big time.
Over the last 8 years, I mean, all that hardware that's over there just to my right, your left. I mean, National Championship Trophy, your Orange Bowl Trophy, the Bowl Challenge Trophy, the Heisman Trophy. And, of course, you guys have brought home just about every single one of those trophies at some point at Florida State. What does it mean for the conference, and what does it mean specifically when you coach one of those programs that's considered one of the flag bearers of your conference, to look over there, see all that stuff, and kind of validate
it makes you
what
very
you've done?
proud, but I think also it's established what this league is becoming. Right now, I think it's the best conference in ball. When you talk about who's winning non-conference games, bowl games, playoff games, everything that Fortitude's Heisman trophies, award winners, coaches, then amount of great coaches in this league right now, I think you're talking about the best league in ball.
And, of course, the one thing that you always give the ACC credit for, even when it didn't quite have the validation and stuff like – the ACC has never been scared to play anyone.
No. We line up, we're more Power 5 wins, better win versus all the leagues, bowl games. I mean, we line up in those venues and play.
I mean, you guys are going to play Alabama the first game of the season. Of course, Georgia Tech's going to play Tennessee in the same building the next night. There's so much competition that the ACC is willing to go out and they're willing to go play. And when you have a game like Alabama, of course, you played Ole Miss last year to start the season. You played Oklahoma State to start in 2014. You've had big games to start. But when you play a game like Alabama, of course, your ties to Coach Saban, of course, the incredible success they've had over the last decade. Is there an added sense of urgency going into camp when you know that game?
When you're talking about the two winningest teams in college football in the last 7 years. In the last 7 years, I've been at Florida State, and he's been there a little bit long. We're the two winningest teams in football. So you got the top two teams in ball playing in the opening game coming out. So I think it does, not the intensity, I think it's the focus and the attention to detail that I think the kids even have to enhance and grasp in the offseason. I think they have.
And when you look at those two teams, you know, you mentioned the consistency, everything that's been there with Florida State and with Alabama. Going into this season, 2017, what you've heard about summer, what you've actually seen in spring ball, how do you feel about the team going into
I like it. I mean, again, it's still, you just incorporated 20-some new guys into it, though. So, you know, I think it was very good. Now it's how those new guys ingrain into what our culture is and how these guys have laid that groundwork, the upperclassmen, which I think is very good, and everything I'm hearing about is very good. So I'm excited to see with my own eyes here very soon.
You mentioned bringing in 20 new guys. Everybody qualified. How great is that as a head coach?
Yeah, we do. We've had a few last year, but that's the first time in a long time. We've had probably 97, 98% of the guys qualify since we've been there, and I think it's a big part of when we recruit what we're going after.
And, you know, with Tamari and Terry, it was just one of those things where you knew he just had to get that class. You knew it was more than likely going to get done.
Oh, yeah, we knew we felt we would never sign them if we didn't think they were going to get qualified.
So just how great of a relief is that as a head coach, knowing everybody's in, everybody's ready, let's roll.
Well, it's good because you spend all that work and you spend sometimes 4 or 5 years recruiting a guy, and then you find out he doesn't qualify or compared to who does qualify. I think it's part of the recruiting process you have to make good decisions on.
Defense is obviously highly touted, had a great second half of that season, played well against Florida, played well against Michigan, played well against some of the best that college football had to offer. You were without one of your vocal leaders on the field in Derwin James last season. Of course, DeMarcus Walker was a big guy and very vocal in everything that defense did. But having Derwin back out on the field, I mean, it's pretty hard to understate how important that is.
Well, it is, and I think the versatility of what he's going to do and the dynamic plays he makes, but the confidence he brings the other guys. And knowing that he's on the field, that they know he has a presence to him about that they feel very comfortable. And I think it enhances their play also.
Yeah, and on top of all that, there's just so many talented guys up and down. Where do you feel like if that defense needs to get better in an area, where is it?
I think it's all areas. I think we have to establish the run. You have to reestablish yourself every game, every season, everything you do. I think we have to be dominant to line of scrimmage. I think we constantly have to find ways to pressure the quarterback, and when he doesn't, he's got to be hit. He has to pay a price for it. I think we can't give up easy plays. I think we have to contest every throw, not give them any, because pressure is what bothers people. When you give people easy outs and ways to make yards and things like that, I think always contesting every throw, press coverages, mixing your secondary looks, and then constant pressures and blitzes, and I think we will. Charles will do a great job in that.
And I know you're always a big proponent of saying that every team is different. Some of the players may change, some folks may go to the draft, but even though the nucleus may stay the same, every single team is different. What are some of the characteristics you've seen early of this team maybe different from a couple years?
I think there's an urgency. I think it has toughness. Competitively and mentally, I think it's learned to push in that regard. I think it has tremendous talent, but I think it's turning into football players and not combine guys. And I think there's a difference. And I think it's learning how to play football, and I like where we're at with that.
Offensively, there's a lot of talent on that side of the ball. You saw Auden Tate and Nooney Murray especially kind of elevate their play towards the end of the season, but it's a very young squad. It's a squad that certainly has I'd say, I mean, is it fair to say question marks?
Well, I mean, you've got question marks on defense. You got question marks everywhere. But Nooney and Auden played in big-time games at big-time moments. The offensive line, for the most part, all but one guy will have played a ton of football. But you got some great young guys that fill in. Even Jaquez has played big roles in the past and started 3 games, and every game he's had over 150 yards. So he's played well. You got experienced tight ends, you got experienced quarterback. Feel good at fullback, and I think Keith Gavin is an outstanding guy that's ready to emerge and play very well for us also.
And, you're replacing Dalvin Cook, one of the best players to ever come to Florida State, but you're doing it with a stable of running backs that's very, very deep, very, very talented. How have they kind of taken to that task of replacing number 4?
I was pleased in the spring, and I think these young guys are anxious to go where they're going. And so, they're very talented, but I think they understand their role, and I think they've played very well in it so far.
Finally, Coach DeAndre Francois, of course, here at Media Days. He's the quarterback. He's the face of your program. He's the face of your organization. The quarterback kind of has to be in today's football.
Yep.
What are you looking from him from year 1 to year 2 under center?
Well, I think you got to understand. Third down, he was outstanding. Red zone, he was outstanding. Turnovers, he was outstanding. 2-minute drives. You're talking about a guy who took you on 5 2-minute game-winning drives to win games. Michigan, NC State, Miami, North Carolina. And we, even though we lost that game, he did his job and take us down and go 90 yards to score the minute on a 1st and 25. And then Ole Miss, the way he's brought us back, the poise he played with, and was doing it in Clemson. We had 2 penalties that negated it back. I mean, this guy has played big moments. But what I think, just understanding his teammates more and then putting his personality and his will on them to play like he does, and the competitiveness he plays with and the toughness he plays with. And I think he's doing a great job of that because they respect him.
Coach, I know you got to keep rolling. I know you got to keep going through the car wash, but thank you so much for taking time with us here today.
Thank you, guys. Glad to be with you.
Thanks as always. All right, more on the other end. Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
Yes, Florida State just landed a 5-star commitment.
I don't see that anywhere online. How did you get that news so fast?
I'm on the new warchant.com app. I get news updates and scores pushed to my phone instantly.
How much does it cost?
It's free. Just go to iTunes or the Google Play Store, type in Warchant, and install it on your phone. That's it.
A free app that keeps me constantly up to date on Florida State sports and recruiting? Wow, that makes it incredibly easy to follow my Seminoles and never miss out.
With the app, you'll also get quick access to all the stories and features on Warchant, including the ever-popular message boards that feature thousands of fans talking about the Noles.
Warchant.com, your ultimate Seminole source.
Welcome back to Wake Up War Chant here on 97.9 ESPN Radio, brought to you by our good friends from For the Table, Madison Social, Central, and Township. Alongside, well, a man who's pretty familiar with Florida State fans, and Florida State fans are pretty familiar with him, Mr. Derwin James, coming back for technically year number 3, but yes, of course, getting back fully healthy. I know when you were there just a little bit earlier when we were talking with you in the big room with all the written press, you were talking about spring football, and that's when you knew you were fully back. Yep. Just to get back out on that field, what did that even feel like to you?
It was very emotional for me. I remember my first time putting my cleats back on and put my helmet on for the first time. Just walking that walk to the field, I was just thinking in my head all of that last year, that play that happened Charlie Sutton. Just a lot of thoughts was going through my head when I was just taking that field. And I made a promise to myself, every day that I take this field, I'm gonna embrace it and I'm gonna enjoy every moment of it.
So this is a pretty interesting question, I guess, to ask you, because you have a little bit different perspective, but I've been asking everybody that's come by the table. What do you know now that you wish you knew this time a year ago?
Man, all the resources and all the different things that the game offers and just what comes with it, just being a leader and like the role that we get to play, just being here, for our coaches to have us here, they must think highly of us, so that's a lot for itself.
Coach Fisher said when he was talking about your injury there a little bit and how you still stayed and you were still a leader out there and you still went to a lot of those practices and you still stayed for every game. that it kind of seemed like you had maybe learned a little bit more the value of not taking being on the field for granted. Do you feel like that's the case?
Yeah, that was definitely the case. That was my main thing. That was my main message from the injury. Don't take nothing for granted. And, it's a blessing just to be able to play this game that we love and, the fans that love to watch it, So that's why that was my biggest message to anybody, don't get discouraged and just don't take nothing for granted.
Sports Illustrated, best player in college football. Were you surprised when you saw that?
Yeah, I was very surprised when I had seen that because, like I said, I only played in 11 games last year. I haven't even reached my full potential of what I can do or what I know I can do. So I feel like I'm number one. So now it's time to stay number one.
How does that even make you feel to know that even though you played so few games, that even though you saw so limited action, people thought enough of you to put you up there?
Yeah, like I say, it's a blessing from God, man. It's just an honor just for people to feel that type of way about me. With me playing so less of games. So that's why I say, like, I got a lot to prove this year. Like I say, and I'm gonna be ready for it. Me and my teammates will be ready. My teammates gonna help me get where I need to be, and I'm helping.
Defensively, you and DeMarcus were definitely the vocal guys last season, and now it just kind of seems like you. Do you feel like you've kind of taken ownership of this defense?
Yeah, definitely. This is my defense. I can say that with confidence because I got a lot of guys that back me up. And like I said, older guys like Trey Marshall and Nate Andrews, they help me a lot with, especially Derek Noddy and those guys, the veteran guys. We help the young guys come along and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do, and everything work hand in hand.
Noddy, Marshall, Nate Andrews back for another year. How nice is it to have all that experience on that team while at the same time having some young stars? I mean, heck, we were talking about Marvin Wilson in that room.
It's great, man, because at linebacker, both our linebackers experienced. Roderick and Matthew Thomas. Secondary, Tavares and we got Nate, Trey, Lane. We deep AJ Westbrook. It's a lot of us, and like I said, we deep in every position, especially with the new freshmen coming in. And they're gonna make an early impact, I feel. So it's gonna be great.
I know the guy that you were ranting and raving about in that room, Marvin Wilson. Just how impressive has he been?
He's very impressive, man. Very, very big guy, man. He's good as advertised, man. I can say he put in the work every day. I see him working, and like I say, he's going to be a great leader eventually for this program and for this team.
There's a lot of expectations for this defense. There's a lot of expectations for you guys, and there was a lot of hype surrounding this defense last year. How do you feel like going into this season you stay more consistent, you keep your eyes on the prize as a unit?
Basically, this year we focusing on starting better because last year we finished pretty strong. But this year the main goal was starting better, starting the games off the way we know we can start the games off, and not waiting to be punched, deliver the first blow. That was the main focus for this, and I feel like we put in the work this summer and this spring for that. So it's going to be good.
Coach Fisher said that he kind of, when he's interacted with the team over the summer, obviously he can't be at summer workouts, but everything he's seen and heard even from spring ball is that there seems to be a bigger sense of urgency with this team.
It's a bigger sense of urgency. Like you say, we want to start games faster, and we focusing on like the inches and the details and making sure holding each other accountable for what their job and what you have to offer for the team. And, like I said, if I'm not doing right, Nate or Trey will let me know. If they're not doing right, I'm going to let them know. So it's all just everybody holding each other to this high responsibility that we need as a team.
I know you've been asked this question by literally everybody who's got a radio table, everybody in that interview room, but I got to ask, man, how excited are you? First game of the season, Alabama.
It's great, man. I wouldn't ask for a better way to come back than opening up with the top dog. I know if I can go out there and make plays against them, make plays against anybody.
When you talk about it, first number 1 versus number 2 matchup, more than likely that's ever happened in the first week of college football. Is that something, I mean, it's something obviously you can't take for granted, but that team, that program, that consistency, just talk about what it means to go up against them.
Like I said, man, they're the top program in college football for a reason. What they have done over the last 10, 15 years, even back in the 80s and the 70s, it's just amazing. That's an amazing program. Like I say, they recruit hard, and they got some great players on their team. And like I said, we Florida State too. We got a tradition too. Like I said, we got a great program too. And like I said, we'll be ready come first game. 2 best winning percentages over the last 10 years. Yes, sir. That's what I'm saying. So we Florida State too. It ain't just all about Alabama. We Florida State.
Clemson, first team to ever beat them in the postseason in a national championship or one of those kickoff games. Had a lot of success. Knowing what you guys have done against Clemson, of course, you've played them very, very well over the last couple of years, and I mean, that game's always a close game. Knowing and being familiar with that team, Does that help you when you see on film what they were able to do and have success against Alabama?
It definitely helped us because, you know, like I said, we were very familiar with that Clemson team. We know that they like to spread us out in tempo and stuff, and we seen some of the things they were successful with at Alabama, and we seen some of the stuff they were not successful with. So it's like it was good for us to see them play against a team that we're very familiar with, and, you know, right up the road that we get to see play all the time.
Derwin, overall, when this season's said and done, what do you hope you can say about it?
Man, I hope I can just look back and remember, man, I gave it all I got. I was the best teammate I could be, and I laid it all on the line for my teammates each and every game. And, you know, I was just that vocal leader. And like I said, I just want to take this program to another level of what it need to be.
Derwin, I know you got to run, my friend, but thanks so much for taking time.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
We roll on after this. Wake Up War Chant, 97.9 ESPN Radio. You know, if you're looking for something to do on Sunday nights, head on over to Madison Social Central Township for the Sunday night Knoll family dinner. That's from 4 to 10 p.m. You choose where you want to go. Go to any of those places there in College Town. Each place has the same deal. If you're a family with kids under 10, you get yourself a free kids meal for every adult entree you buy. And don't worry, for those of you that don't have kids, you get a free appetizer for the table with any entree purchase. Once again, it's 4 to 10 p.m. Throw on your favorite Knoll gear, head over to College Town, have yourself some fun with fellow Florida State fans. It's amazing what a difference a year can make, and I know we talked about that with Jeff Cameron a little bit at the top of the show, but just a year ago, the ACC has their big announcement for their conference network, and, you know, you've seen the financials, you've seen the stuff, you've seen that the ACC has to make up that revenue gap in one way or another, and it really needs it to survive to a certain extent. So last year, you're first in Charlotte. Sure, you had great momentum. Sure, Clemson had just come off playing in the national title game. You're only 3 years removed from Florida State's national championship. But at the same time, it just seemed like a thing for survival. Getting that network, guaranteeing that it was going to happen, making that announcement with John Skipper and ESPN, that was all such a big deal for this league and its viable long-term future for, let's face it, a lot of established brand names. Florida State, Clemson, Louisville, Miami. Say what you want about Paul Johnson, but Georgia Tech, an established national name. These guys needed that last year, and this year it's this big victory party. It's this big victory tour. The Heisman Trophy, the Orange Bowl Trophy, the Bowl Challenge Trophy, the National Championship, they're all in the house. You're touting 2 first-round drafted quarterbacks. You're touting a league that did as good as anybody in out-of-conference scheduling last year and has a chance to prove it again with Florida State, Alabama, with Clemson and Auburn, with Georgia Tech and Tennessee, and those are 3 games that are just in the first 2 weeks of the season. So as I said, what a difference a year can make, how cyclical and how crazy and how wonderful this sport we love is. But overall, what a fun day here at the ACC Kickoff in Charlotte. Of course, a lot of folks getting to reconnect with some people, and again, we're going to have plenty more for you as the weeks roll on. And, of course, haven't had a ton of time to talk about it, but you know we've got plenty of written stuff up on warchant.com. Ryan and Ira have done great work. We've got plenty of videos coming for you. As we sit here recording this, we are literally uploading the complete Jimbo Fisher interaction with the media. That's 45 minutes of your head coach talking about the season ahead for Florida State. So with that being said, go to warchant.com. And my thanks, of course, to Jeff Cameron. My thanks to Jimbo Fisher for joining us. And my thanks to Derwin James. We'll be back on Monday, back in the studio. Drew and I will be with you. And we'll still be coming at you with plenty of interviews and plenty of stuff that we've gotten here from ACC Kickoff. It's a wonderful experience, as always. We'll talk to you Monday. Till then, Mike and Mike's up next, 97.9 ESPN Radio.
WarChant.com is the ultimate inside source for FSU football and recruiting. And now you can get in on the action for free for an entire month. WarChant.com is offering a risk-free 30-day trial subscription. Get full access to the #1 website covering the Seminoles just by entering the promo code WarChant30. That's WarChant30. Sign up and get in on the world's most active FSU message boards. Receive breaking news, stories from our award-winning staff, plus get exclusive interviews and videos. Just enter the promo code WarChant30. WarChant.com, your ultimate Seminole sports source.
Hey, thanks for downloading today's show. If you haven't already, why don't you rate and subscribe us? We certainly do appreciate it, and of course, we appreciate you listening anyway, so just go ahead and click that right there. You know you want to. Come on. Come on. Thanks again for letting us do the show. We love giving you all the football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, all year round. Not just football season, not just spring practice, but hopefully giving you the freshest and newest FSU content every day. Thanks, guys.